It's like a family tree, part of you and part of me.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to BrickCats. Don't forget to like or subscribe, I greatly appreciate it. Your support means more great mock reviews in the future. Today I'm taking a closer look at Edge of Brick's amazing TIE Whisper model. And with apologies, I have to zoom out a bit on my iPhone here because it's rather long. So the perspective might be a little distorted, but I will do my best. Let's be honest, The Rise of Skywalker is just not a good movie, and the only thing that makes it watchable is that it's Star Wars, and it's the end of the line for the Skywalker saga. It also has some pretty cool scenes and visuals, but regardless of what you think of the movie, the trailers for The Rise of Skywalker were, in my opinion, really cool. And this scene in particular, even if it was seemingly made specifically for the trailer, since it was basically just so comically random in the movie, the entire Pasana sequence is just ridiculous. It's full of symbolism, and in a movie with an actual plot and a good script, it really would have been great. But let's not let Tross's misery take away from a really cool model. In my reviews, I cover aesthetics, parts issues you might want to look out for, the build experience, the model's integrity, and I offer a conclusion. If you're watching this, I assume you have a general interest in building MOCs, you've taken a look at the instructions or are interested in buying them, and I assume a base level knowledge with Bricklink's ordering system. My disclaimer on this and all my MOC reviews is that I only use genuine LEGO bricks. I always purchase the instructions for myself for my own personal enjoyment, and in the hopes that my advice will make your experience more enjoyable and or less expensive. Visually, I think Edge of Bricks did a really great job capturing the details of the TIE Whisper at what is approximately minifigure scale. These red stripes along the sides of the cockpit and the red flags are faithful to what you see on screen and the various canon images you can find online. The gray panels framed with a little bit of black are almost canon accurate in my opinion. I am not quite sure where the inspiration for this dark bluish gray section comes from, but from all the images I can find, it seems that these would be light bluish gray, or the same color as these panels here. But not a big deal. It still looks really good, and even if it's not canon accurate, which is clearly up for debate, it does add some interest just having this one different color section there. The wings are canted at just the right angle, and they use these fingered hinge pieces to create that angle. So overall, it's a very, very good looking interceptor shape on the wings. And the shape is so good, I'd really like to see this design modified for a standard interceptor. I think it would look really good. I really like the balance between studded and tiled surfaces here on the wings. And even the small little gaps on the central support strut, a little easier to see from the back here. And you can briefly see these in the trailer and in the movie. And those are represented with just a small gap with the 1x2 curved slope there. There is a small antenna included, as well as a slight modification to the instructions with the blaster cannons underneath the cockpit pod there. The rear of the fighter is a simple 6x6 black dish with 2 engines on the side. I wasn't able to get or find a clear shot of the rear of the ship, but there was that leaked image from the Porsche commercial in which the Whisper appears to have some kind of rear window or gunner position, kind of like the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter does. That's obviously not here, and I don't think it would be too difficult to modify this to accommodate that with the rear cockpit piece of the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter. But then again, I haven't been able to confirm that that's actually canon or not. So, this is perfectly fine. The cockpit shape itself is not perfectly rounded. You can see that there's some slope action going on here, and Kylo fits in just fine. Overall, there's so much detail kind of around the cockpit that having it off round doesn't really matter. You don't notice it. And honestly, I think that if it was round with the, what are those, the 3x3x2 eighth of a hemisphere pieces, sorry, I can't remember what they're called, it would definitely make the other detailing a lot more complicated. But and you can see edge on that it looks round, and it's fine. It looks really good. And of course, Kylo has a control yoke and some instrument panels in there. So overall, the appearance of this model is most excellent. Really great work with the detailing for the red. The wings look really good, and there's just lots of detail with the blasters here on the ends of the wings. This thing has a almost comical amount of weaponry. I'm not sure why. Oops. I'm not sure why this thing has so many guns, because you can't fire all of them at once, you would think. And of course, it's hilarious that with the number of guns this thing has, he doesn't bother to shoot at Rey, but just tries to run her over. Oh well. So overall, excellent job on the model's appearance. The Whisper with the cannon modification underneath here contains 145 elements and 949 parts. Edge of Bricks marks the parts that can be any color in blue, which is super helpful and very builder friendly, and I really appreciate this extra level of effort to reduce the overall cost. The top hatch 6x6 part 18675 PB06 is from the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter set. That's number 75101, and it's reasonably inexpensive right now. But if you do have the Kylo Ren TIE Fighter set 75179, that top hatch will also work. I would definitely not buy that top hatch separately because it's really expensive at the moment. The specified windscreen is also from the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter. It's part 18675 PB05. But if you have the standard black and gray TIE cockpit piece, I think that works fine as well, as it's far from clear, at least to me, that the red shade for the cockpit piece is actually canon accurate. I tried both windscreens, and even though this is the red one here, I actually think the black one looks better, as it makes the red highlights around the cockpit stand out a little bit more. Inside the cockpit, there are 4 printed slope pieces and 2 printed tile pieces specified. Sorry, focus. In my opinion, this is a little bit overkill. Probably 1 or 2 of the printed slopes, and I don't even think these printed tiles are necessary. Any instrument panel or slope that you have works fine, or you could simply omit them if you're just building this to be display only. The 2 on the side here, you can barely see it. Part 3069 BPS2 in particular is really expensive right now for some reason. Alright, I flattened the wings out here for illustration purposes. The inverted tiles in light bluish gray, of which there are 40 specified, they're here, here, and here, along with the mirror image on each section of the wing, as well as dark bluish gray, here and here, of which there are 16, and black, of which there are 8. These are all part 11203, and they could easily be replaced with 2x2 plates of the same color. The inverted tiles obviously remove some of the anti-studs on the back of the wing for appearance purposes, but you're going to have anti-studs anyway because you can't do anything about these wedge pieces. So if cost is an issue, you could definitely consider omitting these. These tend to be, I don't know, I'd say 10 to 15 cents each, and they're not as common as just the plain 2x2 plate. So you're likely going to add a store if you're buying them as well. But if you find a good deal on them, they're really handy for many other MOCs, so maybe there's some value there, but easily omittable if you so choose. On a similar note, on the flip side of the wings, the design calls for 16 2x4 tiles in light bluish gray, 6 of these modified tiles in light bluish gray. These can easily be replaced with plates of the same size or some sort of reasonable subdivision of plates, and you just lose some of the tiled look on the wings. I really think that the tiled and or the balance between tiles and studs is really good on these wings. It adds for some extra texture, makes it a little more interesting, but a fully studded look wouldn't look bad either because you've already got some flat areas on the edges of the wedge pieces here. And finally, the smaller wedges, these 4x2s, especially these 2x2 wedges, and some of the 3x2s, they seem to be rather expensive these days. I would definitely pay close attention to the prices on these, and since you're buying so many of them, it might make sense to find the cheapest store that has them in the quantity you need, and place an order with that store to lock in the low price. They're so expensive that you can definitely make up for the shipping costs of an extra store and then some if you find a good price. So sometimes the algorithm in all its wisdom can't see the forest for the trees and gives you a store charging 2 or 3 times what you could be paying elsewhere, and that price differential negates the savings that you get from shipping from one store versus 2. So I definitely recommend just seeing what the cost is, doing a pretty simple calculation as far as what you can get at what price, and seeing if you come out ahead there. But overall, I would say that the parts list is very economical, and I think Rebrickable did a really good job balancing kind of form versus function here, and there's really not much to improve on. The build is not particularly complex, and it's very easy to follow, as you expect. Rebrickable clearly has his workflow down, and he actually makes a lot of MOCs, so I'm sure that he's very experienced in making instructions. The pieces to be added are highlighted in pink on each step, and the entire build took me about 2.5 hours from start to finish. The wing sections are a little repetitive, not much anyone can do about that. You go into this expecting it. If you built the Kylo Ren TIE Fighter, it's the same kind of deal. There were a few minor issues that I noted, none of which are critical. In step 22, these subassemblies are not secured until step 28, and the instructions have you flipping over the model in the meantime, and this means that they'll just fall off. So I would just set them aside until step 28, and it's the construction on either side of the central support bracket here. These are upside down, so you marry them together, anti-stud to anti-stud, and then you secure them on the sides. So that's all those are. Step 61 shows a screwdriver in the parts box, but it's actually a minifigure wand in the parts list. That's the small antenna. And for certain sections you have to build twice, like I can't remember exactly, but I think it's the wing sections. You only get the two times indicator at the very end, and I think that would have been more useful at the beginning. So you can do them simultaneously, or at least you know ahead of time you'll have to go back to that first section of the subassembly to do it again. This is an issue for steps 63 to 84, the middle subassembly of the wings. 85 to 107, and that's one of the top and the bottom here on the opposite side. And steps 108 to 132, and that's the other wing subassembly. So I think it just would have been more helpful if the 2 indicator was at the beginning of those subassemblies. As far as model integrity goes, this is definitely swooshable. Like any model, you just have to grab it in the right place, I guess. There are a few sections that you should look out for, and you can see that one of them is the blasters, but I'll go in order of my little script here. So the upper and lower hinge plates, depending on what I cut and what I don't, you've seen them fall off already. They're not particularly secure because they use these fingered hinges, and the angle is not locked in place, so you can just slide these back on. You hear them click, and then they move like this. But if you put too much pressure, they all fall off. So it would have been nice to have a locking mechanism of some kind, maybe a mixel joint or some other alternative brace back here to kind of lock that angle in place and make sure that it doesn't fall off. And this is the reason I would have appreciated some kind of stand. The Rebrickable page mentions that one can put it on a stand, but there aren't any instructions or parts that I could find to actually make a stand for this model. I did build my own. I modified the rear of the TIE Fighter slightly to accommodate that, and basically, let's see if I can adjust the light here. So I added a Technic plate, or 2 Technic plates back here, and that allows me to stick a Technic axle in there to give it some extra stability. And then of course you've got the hole in the dish piece here. Also, I'll just mention that you can see this green, white, those were all specified in blue, which means you can use any color because they're completely hidden in the final build. Oops. So that goes on like that. So with the modification, this is the stand I came up with. This moves around a little bit just because it's not an exact angle. And you've got some front supports here for the bottom of the fighter. So that just slides in like that. And so I knew I wanted this to be kind of canted at an angle. And there it is. Earlier you saw these blasters come off underneath the cockpit here. Those are only secured by a pneumatic T in a 1x1 hollow plate with open stud, so there's no surprise there. The blaster cannons at the end of the wings and in the middle section here, those are also hinges, so they can get out of alignment. They don't tend to come off in my experience too much, so not too bad there. I had a couple of experiences with the rear dish coming off. I think that was mostly my fault. It's not a big deal. But I'll show you the most irritating thing, and that is these red stripes on the side of the cockpit here. So these are absolutely essential for the look of the Whisper. So they're secured on these hinge bricks, like this. And that makes it really difficult to put these back on as the whole thing falls apart. That one wasn't too bad. So you can see how this rotates about the hinge axis, of course. It just makes it really difficult to put back on when these fall off. And you can see that since the hinge plates are open studs, they're now secure as normal studs. And so you just have to get the alignment perfect before you apply pressure, otherwise the hinge will be a hinge. So that's super annoying, and unfortunately, since you're grabbing this usually by the cockpit pod, you bump those all the time and they come off, and it's just really annoying to get back on. So as long as you're a little careful about how you handle it, you should be fine. And obviously these aren't the biggest deal in the world to put back on. I just found myself having to do it fairly often, much more often than I'd like, and since it's not the easiest thing to actually make this connection, just due to the hinges not being locked on either end, it can be rather frustrating. There you go, finally. So in conclusion, I had a lot of fun with this model, and despite the questionable value or entertainment value of Rise of Skywalker, I was happy that at least one positive thing came out of it, that one positive thing being this model. I'm just kidding. Rise of Skywalker wasn't a total loss, but this is a really great LEGO model, and I'm happy that I built it. It fills a nice gap. I heard that Rise of Skywalker sets weren't selling that well, but I am a little surprised that this wasn't a candidate for an official set. But I guess if you look at the actual Rise of Skywalker lineup, it's lackluster to say the least. But I do think this would have been really cool as an official set. I would have loved to see what they could have done. Regardless, running the algorithm on the parts list without any modifications, I was getting between 5 and 8 stores and between $122 and $145 before shipping and taxes. And that equates to anywhere from $157 to $185 after shipping and taxes. Of course, your mileage may vary. And I'm confident the total would have been lower substituting the plates for these inverted tiles. And like I said, if you can find all the wedge pieces you need, and you need a lot of them, you might be able to save some money there. So overall, this model looks great. There's some really builder-friendly features in the parts list. And the instructions are very well done, aside from the minor issues I discussed earlier. And as far as the model goes, or MOC goes, that's pretty much all you can ask for these days. So the only thing that you'll miss here is a stand to put it on, but it sits just fine on a flat surface without one, as long as you set it down gently. So yeah, overall, this is great. Thanks as always for spending some of your time watching my review of Edge of Brick's TIE Whisper. If you built this model, you have something to share that I left out, or have a question I didn't cover, please leave them below in the comments. Also consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, checking out any of my other videos, or following me on Instagram for more LEGO Star Wars content. Thanks, and I hope to see you back soon.